Picture this. You're strapped into a fighter plane over the Pacific Ocean. Below you, nothing but open water for 1,000 miles in every direction. Ahead of you, the most heavily fortified Japanese naval base in the entire South Pacific. Around you, dozens of enemy fighters already climbing to meet you. Your orders are simple. Clear the sky. Or picture this. You're the captain of a small destroyer escort. Your ship weighs 1,350 tons. So the Japanese battleship bearing down on you weighs 69,000. It has guns that can hurl a 3,000-pound shell nearly 30 miles. You have two 5-inch guns that couldn't dent its hull if you tried. Your orders? Stop it anyway. These are not stories from a Hollywood script. These are things that actually happened, flown and sailed and fought by American men in their 20s who had every reason to turn back and didn't. Stay with me, because what these men did changed the outcome of the entire Pacific War. June 23, 1945. A flight of 4 P-51 Mustangs lifts off from Iwo Jima just before 10 in the morning. Their mission: fly deep into the Japanese mainland, strafe an airbase north of Tokyo, and eliminate the threat it poses to American bomber formations. Lieutenant Robert Scamara, 22 years old, flies element lead. The flight up is brutal, not from enemy fire, but from pure, grinding endurance. And the P-51 Mustang is a magnificent aircraft. It is not a comfortable one. The engine noise alone, 8 hours of it, wears a man down to his last nerve. Scamara later said he flew tight formation with the other Mustangs just to have something to focus on, something to keep him from falling asleep at the controls. That is how far American pilots had to fly just to reach the fight. When they arrive over the target airfield, the plan changes immediately. When the Japanese planes aren't sitting on the ground waiting to be destroyed, they're already in the air. 7 fighters at 9 o'clock low, 17 more at 7 o'clock high. And then, tracers. Bright orange streaks flashing past Scamara's cockpit. Someone is already shooting at him. He breaks formation, technically against the rules, and rolls hard left, with his wingman, John Scanlon, right behind him. The sky around them erupts into a curtain of tracer fire. From that moment on, it is a pure, violent, rolling dogfight. One plane after another. Everywhere Scamara turns, there is a Japanese fighter. The P-51 Mustang had a secret weapon that most people have never heard of. It wasn't the engine. It wasn't the speed. It was a piece of technology so simple and so effective that it changed aerial combat forever. And Scamara was about to use it. And the P-51 Mustang was one of the first American fighters equipped with the K-14 gyroscopic gun sight, a lead computing sight that did something revolutionary. Before the K-14, a fighter pilot had to calculate the lead on a moving target himself. You had to look at a plane crossing in front of you, estimate its speed, estimate its angle, and fire at a point in empty sky, hoping the plane would fly into your bullets. A skill that took months to develop and still killed pilots who learned it wrong. The K-14 did that math for you. You dialed in the target aircraft's wingspan, roughly 37 feet for a 0, and the sight's gyroscope automatically computed the correct lead. All you had to do was put the dot on the plane. That is what gave Scamara his first kill. A Japanese 0 swings across his nose. He puts the dot on it. Short burst. The 0 takes hits, staggers, and limps out of the fight, badly damaged. Scamara is already looking for the next target. He spots 2 N-1K Georges at 9 o'clock low. The N-1K was the most advanced fighter Japan produced in the entire war, a genuine threat to any American aircraft it encountered. Scamara doesn't hesitate. He tells his wingman, "I'll take the leader. You take his wingman." He pushes the throttle forward, closes the distance in seconds, and fires. The George goes down. Splash 1 confirmed kill. But Scamara isn't done. He keeps the throttle forward. Fires short bursts. Disciplined. How controlled? Because Japanese aircraft had no armor plating. They didn't need much to go down, and he didn't want to burn through his ammunition on a plane that was already finished. "It seemed like every place I pointed," he later said, "there was a Japanese plane." Then the threat changes. The K-184 Frank was the fastest fighter in the Japanese arsenal in 1945, and one of them is now diving at Scamara from 6 o'clock high. Scamara brakes hard left. The Frank pilot makes the mistake of coming in too fast. He overshoots, flying past Scamara and pulling up into a climb. In that fraction of a second, everything reverses. Scamara rolls over, points his nose up, and strains to get the gun sight on the climbing Frank. The G-forces are crushing. He is nearly at a stall, wings on the edge of losing lift, when he fires. Short burst. The Frank erupts in flame and plummets past his nose. Splash 3. But Scamara has been in this fight for a long time now. His fuel is diminishing, his ammunition is running low, and somewhere in the chaos of the rolling dogfight, he has lost track of the other 2 aircraft in his flight. He scans the sky and finds it empty. Almost. His wingman, John Scanlon, is still right there. Has been there the entire time. Through every break, every reversal, every diving spiral. Never left his lead's wing. The 2 Mustangs turn for the rally point and head for home. See, they almost made it. They're barely away from the fight when Scamara sees it. A 0, sitting directly on Scanlon's tail. He banks hard toward it, trying to close the distance before the 0 fires. He isn't going to make it. He keys his radio. "Scanlon, there's a Japanese plane on your tail. Do something." Too late. The 0's 20mm cannons tear through Scanlon's wings. Both burst into flame instantly. Scanlon jettisons his canopy and bails out, the cockpit already burning around him. Scamara circles his wingman's parachute, firing at every Japanese plane that comes within gun range, protecting a man he can no longer save. He keeps the 0s at bay until 4 of his 6 guns run dry and the last 2 are almost out. Then he turns west and flies home alone. He lands on Iwo Jima after 8 hours and 17 minutes in the air. 6 empty guns. 54 gallons of internal fuel remaining. On 3 confirmed kills, 4 damaged aircraft, and 1 wingman who didn't come home. Scamara didn't learn what happened to Scanlon until years later. A small newspaper article. 2 Japanese women had been charged with, and acquitted of, war crimes. Their crime, releasing an American POW from an infirmary to a civilian mob that had been demanding his surrender. The mob lynched him. "I'd gladly have given them back all 3 victories," Scamara said, "if I could have saved John." February 16th to 1944. Truk Atoll, the Caroline Islands. The Japanese had been fortifying this place since the end of World War I. It was their Pearl Harbor, their Gibraltar, a massive natural fortress ringed by barrier reefs that put it beyond the reach of naval gunfire. The only way to attack it was from the air. 25-year-old Lieutenant J.G. Alex Vraciu launches from the carrier USS Intrepid with a division of 12 Hellcat fighters. This is a pure fighter sweep. No bombers to escort. To no mission beyond one: clear the sky of every Japanese aircraft over Truk. For Hellcat pilots, this is what they've been waiting for. "We were looking forward to it," Vraciu later said, with the controlled understatement of a man who chose his words very carefully. The F-6F Hellcat was specifically designed in response to the Zero's superiority in early Pacific combat. Grumman engineers literally took a captured Zero apart. They studied every design choice the Japanese had made and built something better. More powerful engine, heavier armament, armored cockpit, self-sealing fuel tanks. The Zero could outmaneuver it in a slow-speed turning fight, but the Hellcat could do things a Zero could not. Vraciu and his wingman Lou Little fly at the rear of their 12-plane formation. They approach truck low to avoid radar, then climb to 13,000 feet as the atoll comes into view. The first 10 Hellcats are already nosing over into their strafing run when Vraciu glances back over his shoulder. Zeros, 30 of them, 3,000 feet above, already diving. Vraciu faces a choice that will happen in the next 3 seconds. Dive with his squadron and put 30 Zeros directly on everyone's tail, or turn into the attack alone. He turns. Vraciu and Little pull a hard left turn directly into the oncoming Zeros. It is the correct tactical decision and a terrifying one. But it also, for a clean shot, collapses. But it also means flying directly toward 30 enemy fighters at closing speeds above 500 miles per hour. The lead Zero is already firing when Vraciu fires first. "Just a fast burst to discourage him," he later said. It works. The Zero breaks off and dives for the water, a Japanese habit that Vraciu had learned to expect. Attack aggressively, but when countered, dive away. It had worked against the older Wildcat. The Hellcat was another matter. A second Zero swings around onto Vraciu's tail. Vraciu and Little pull a chandelle, a high, sweeping climbing turn that uses gravity to accelerate the rotation, whipping the nose around faster than a level turn could manage. The Zero, trying to match it, stalls out. The Hellcats roll over behind it and position for the kill. But more Zeros are diving from above. Vraciu can't chase the stalled one, not with threats still carrying altitude advantage. He and Little shift into the thatch weave instead, a defensive pattern where 2 fighters swing back and forth in overlapping arcs, each covering the other's blind spot. No matter which angle a Zero attacks from, one of the Hellcats will have a firing solution on it. The Japanese, frustrated, make their fatal mistake. They come down to the Hellcat's altitude. The moment they do, Vraciu breaks out of the defensive pattern. "Up until that point, we were purely defensive," he said. "Once they came down to our level, then we went on offense." What follows is one of the most lopsided dogfight sequences of the Pacific War. Zero after Zero dives away from the Hellcats. The Hellcat easily catches every one. A float plane Zero tries to hide in the clouds. Vraciu pulls up into the sun, waits at the angle where the Japanese pilot can't see him, and comes down from 5 o'clock. "Though I don't think he even knew what hit him," Vraciu said. 4 kills in a single day over Truk. His squadron, as part of the larger 72 Hellcat sweep, accounts for 130 Japanese aircraft destroyed in the air. Another 74 are destroyed on the ground. In a single day, Truk's air defense is effectively finished. October 25, 1944. The Battle of Leyte Gulf. The largest naval battle in history. A massive Japanese fleet, battleships, cruisers, to destroyers, bears down on a small group of American escort carriers known as Taffy 3. These are not warships. They are thin-skinned carriers designed to support amphibious landings. Their planes are armed with depth charges and light bombs, useless against armored warships. Standing between the Japanese fleet and the destruction of the entire Leyte invasion force are a handful of destroyers and destroyer escorts. Ships so outmatched that what they are about to do is genuinely hard to believe. On the USS Samuel B. Roberts is a destroyer escort. She weighs 1,350 tons. She has two 5-inch guns. The Japanese heavy cruiser bearing down on her weighs over 12,000 tons and carries 8-inch guns that fire shells weighing nearly 300 pounds each. Roberts charges anyway. She pushes through her own smokescreen to within 2.5 miles of the cruiser Chokai, so close the Japanese guns cannot depress low enough to hit her, and puts 3 torpedoes into Chokai's hull. So sailors who survived described cheering like it was a baseball game. Then Roberts turns her 2 5-inch guns on ships 10 to 30 times her size, and fights for 60 straight minutes. 600 rounds of 5-inch ammunition. Direct hits on multiple Japanese warships. At 8:51 a.m., 3 8-inch shells find her. Then 3 14-inch shells from the battleship Congo tear a 40-foot hole in her side. She goes down at 9:35 a.m. 89 men go down with her. The USS Johnston, another destroyer, performs the same impossible act, charging a Japanese column to break up a torpedo run, crossing the T on a cruiser column, absorbing dozens of heavy hits before her engines finally die. She fights for 2 hours and 45 minutes before sinking. 186 men lost. But here is what those men accomplished with their sacrifice. Admiral Kurita, commanding a fleet of 20 undamaged ships, including the largest battleship ever built, turned his entire force around and went home because he couldn't figure out what kind of fleet would fight like that. He assumed it had to be something much larger than it was. He couldn't comprehend that destroyers were doing this. MacArthur's invasion force was saved. The liberation of the Philippines continued. The war in the Pacific turned on the courage of men in small ships who refused to accept that their situation was hopeless. The 3 stories. Different wars, different aircraft, different waters. But the same thing at the center of all of them. Men who did the math, who understood exactly how outnumbered they were, exactly how thin the odds were, and flew and sailed forward anyway. Scamara firing until his guns went empty over Japan. Vraciu turning alone into 30 zeros. The crew of the Samuel B. Roberts cheering like it was a ball game while they torpedoed a ship 10 times their size. These were not men who didn't understand the danger. They understood it completely. That is what makes what they did remarkable. They've mostly faded from the history books now. Their names don't appear in the headlines, but the world they made possible, every day of peace that followed in the Pacific, was bought with what they did on those days. Remember them. If this story hit you the way it should, share it. Because these men deserve to be known. Thank you for watching.